So,
नमस्कार देवी और सज्जनों। वैसे तो
yeah, it's
पता नहीं कितने लोग सुनेंगे, बट वेलकमिंग
yeah, I'm
वीडियो
going.
लगना चाहिए।
तो हमने डिसाइड किया मैक्सिमस भाई, आपका रिकमेंडेशन से जो हम ये बुक के ऊपर थोड़ा एनालिसिस करेंगे। तो आपने अगर कभी सुना नहीं रहेगा, लेट्स टॉक इन इंग्लिश। हाँ, so
ऐसे
if
हिंदी बीच में चलेगा क्योंकि आई थिंक देयर इज लॉट ऑफ टॉक्स
okay,
ऑन
no
दैट
problem.
बुक फॉर
English.
इंग्लिश।
So George Orwell is the writer of this book, 1984, and this was published in the 1940s, I think, or is it much
48, it's
later?
just it was 48, he just flipped it to 84.
Oh, okay, okay. So this is just after the end of World War II.
Right.
All right. So yeah, it's a very interesting book, and I think it should be required reading in our education system. What do you think? I mean, I think it's that important, especially if we're looking at government and uh,
I think
control.
I'm not sure about uh, India specifically, but
Hmm.
I've heard from many people online that 1984 is part of curriculum in many places, either high
Yeah,
school or college. Yeah.
yeah. That's
So
true. There's
I
many
think I think people who study English literature must be aware of the book.
right, and
Yeah.
still we see this Orwellian kind of government in all the places around the world, even after
Yeah,
they
but yeah,
uh,
see, most of the people who have read the books are proles or
right.
trolls, how we calls it.
Proletariat.
So yeah, so it doesn't. But fun fact: Orwell was born in Bihar.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Oh,
but I
wow.
think as soon as before he turned 1 year old, or just he was 1 year old, and then they
Hmm.
shifted back to London or England to be this. I don't know exactly. Yeah, England,
Hmm.
and I think he joined the police or something. He was stationed in Burma, and then he went to Spain during the. Uh, I don't remember. I should check that next time I start history.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
I think he was somewhat of a war correspondent in Spain. He
he was
started.
I think he was a member of the Labour Party in Britain, right?
Yeah, he was a social democrat.
Right, right. He's no, I
That is
don't know if
another
he's.
thing. I
Mhm,
mean,
mhm.
being a socialist, a British socialist, most probably a Fabian. I don't know that for sure.
Right.
But then
Yeah,
he
he
is
seemed.
mentioned in the book. Sorry,
Mhm.
please.
Yeah, he seemed to be friends with another great writer whose name is Aldous Huxley,
Right.
and he's well known for another similar book, not similar, but on the similar topic of totalitarianism, and that book's called Brave New World, and it came out much earlier. So I think their interaction regarding this book 1984 is a good uh, s- uh, s- is a good food for thought for us living in modern times. But yeah, I mean, let's start off with the basics. This story is about a person named Winston, and he lives in this this super state. It's called Oceania, correct?
Yep.
And it's run by this party. Oceania is a super state that's situated in the English Isles, and it's run by this party called INSOC,
Yeah.
which is
It's the entire American continent, Southern Africa, and the British Isles.
Yeah, and it's said to be part of three super states that are existing at the time. So this it's kind of like all the smaller states, all the smaller nations have disappeared, and it's what exists in this dystopia is is a federation of all of these. Not, I don't know if it's a federation, but it's merging of all of these smaller states into one gigantic super state. And one of these super states is Oceania, and it's run by this party called INSOC. That's INGSOC. So INSOC is Newspeak, another concept that we will explore. Newspeak, Newspeak for English socialism. Newspeak is a very interesting concept that is in this book, and it's basically like shortening, like revising and shortening the language. Like instead of wonderful or awesome, you have double plus good, and you know plus good or whatever, and it's like changing of the language to and this language is like this changing of the language is based on like the precedent that language is ultimately for control. So this is like a real woke concept in a certain way, if you think about it, a predecessor to that. So and of course we'll get into that later as well. I want to start off with this the thing this book is most known about, and that is the big brother, all surveillance system. And the famous symbol, as you see on the book, it's like is big eye, and people may know this in conspiratorial circles. This big eye, it's a symbol that's well known among conspiracy theorists. And so what this symbol means is basically it's like it's a mass surveillance system, right? It predicts mass surveillance back in the 1940s, and now we have this system like after the WikiLeaks, the Assange WikiLeaks of Vault 7, and the Snowden leaks. We get to know that our intelligence uh, institutions, not only in US but all over the world, they are surveilling the people through their devices. Like they may surveil us right now through this webcam, or they may surveil us through our mobile devices, and they may listen into our conversations. So it's a mass surveillance system that keeps track of what we are doing. And we are, I mean, even in our private lives, we are not safe from the system. So right off the bat, our right to privacy is gone. And I'd want to talk about the spiritual angle of this, but first I like to get your thought on this, Maximus. What is your take on this Big Brother? I know like a lot of Indians are famous with Big Brother, brother
Big
in a
Boss.
different way. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That reality
so to
show.
get some
Yeah.
context,
Hmm.
this book is about a state uh, which is about control, which is about hyper surveillance. So everywhere in Oceania, you can find telescreens. So that is what Orwell had uh, come up with, and these telescreens would be everywhere, including your living room. And you had patriotic songs or music, or news flashes and instructions about getting up and working out for people, all these kind of things. And the best part of that television set was two-way communication was possible. So it was a TV in which the government could watch you, and they could hear you as well. So even if you whispered or you had to whisper to really avoid it, or you had to be in such kind of place in which the TV is far away. So, so in that context, there is show in a West which was called Brick Brother on similar theme, in which there are people in a particular residence and there are cameras all over, and everything that is done can be seen and can be heard. And similar concept we have in India, that's called Big Boss, but uh, none of this show convey what's there in the book. The book is quite scary. It's not entertaining as such. Yes, you may find it interesting as a read to just go through the plot and compare it to what's happening right now. Uh, if you're if you have never read this book, or you're not familiar with geopolitics or the topic of control and surveillance, then this is a good book to start with. And speaking about what you had mentioned, Newspeak. So Newspeak, yes, it is similar to wokeism. The control of language, what is allowed to say and what is not. But what is mentioned in 1984 is more scary. It's not just developing new language, but discarding the old one. So the main theme in 1984, not just Newspeak, even the history itself, is about eliminating the past. So one of the main theme that comes up in the book is one who controls the past controls the future. And when the antagonist of that particular story, O'Brien, is speaking to Winston, you must have remembered during that room 101, prior to room 101, the torture that happens. In that, he mentions that the power of the state is to remove the past. If the past doesn't exist, there is nothing to compare to. The present, you won't have any benchmark to what was there before, or is it better or it is worse. And specifically to Newspeak, if you remember, there was a character called Syme. I don't know how to pronounce it, Syme. He has a small interaction with the protagonist Winston in the cafeteria. And he's like, the objective of Newspeak is to eliminate old speak, the old words. And the purpose of that was to reduce the number of words and vocabulary. So there are less things to express and less things to think. Like if the word freedom or privacy doesn't exist at all, it's completely erased from the past. And the person who's born at that particular time and is only exposed to newspeak would know that concept to start with. So I hope wokeism doesn't reach there. Uh, but
Right.
the main idea of the book was total control of mind, and and this is what revolution is about. Revolution is always about severing your connections with the past. uh, I think that is where newspeak falls. And when it comes to surveillance, yes, definitely there is. You can say there are cameras everywhere, and it's not just the government. I mean, it's common practice. Even if you live in a decent sized society, you'll have cameras for surveillance. It's a people feel safe when there are cameras. It's for safety. That's what it is said. It is true to some purpose. Yes, it definitely, there are cameras. There is less chances of doing crime, but it doesn't stop over there, and that is the whole point of the book. So something like surveillance in the Indian court. Now, one thing that I remember is there was mention in the book. I think it's the first or the second chapter, in which they were talking about the old governments, and why couldn't they control the way the current government can control the people, and that was technology. At the olden times, it was difficult to uh, have surveillance or control the population because of the lack of technology. You never know what the person is doing at any point of time. and there were no roads, no airways. So that was difficult. And now with the advent of new technology, it is similar, and we can see that if you see in the Indian context, uh, I can say that it started with the Aadhaar card. So initially, sorry, initially things like ration card was used as an identity to avail any government services, but under the pretext of there can be forgeries, so they introduced a unique number called Aadhaar. I think it's a 16-digit number, right? And it also collects the main part rather than giving a unique number. It collects your fingerprints and your retina eye scan. They scan your eyes and they have the data. And it started as something that it's not really mandatory, and then it's something that can be used to avail government services. But as time went by, um, it was mandated in many things. Like if you need to open a bank account, you need to have you need to give your Aadhaar number. Then it went to your driving licenses if you want to avail mobile telephone services. So each and every service, irrespective to government or private, has been linked to it. And even though there was, I think, some dispute in the court regarding the validity of the Aadhaar or whether it is legal or no, then I don't remember the year, but the court has said that it is just something similar to a PAN card. It shouldn't be mandatory everywhere. But then eventually now you need to link your PAN and Aadhaar for income tax and
Right,
income
right.
tax purposes.
And
So it's
also you can't, it's very hard to open a bank account without it. It's very hard to
mm,
get a job without it.
mm,
I think there's like a handful of mom and pop businesses who will take
uh,
you if you don't have Aadhaar card. The rest are, if you want a big pay and if you want big opportunities, you have to have
uh,
it. And bank account, of course, they don't let you open a
mm.
bank account without it. So yeah, ultimately it has become sort of an open secret in a way. Like it's all mandatory. It's like it's not optional at all.
There's one more thing uh, that was in the books. Uh, yes. So I think yes, it was in the first chapter where the
Mhm,
protagonist Winston, he just goes to the his room,
mhm,
and he's started off thinking of starting to write something in like a diary kind of thing. And then
mhm.
it was mentioned, I'll just read it out. The pen was an archaic instrument, seldom used even for signatures. And he had procured one fruitively and with some difficulty. Isn't it the same today? I remember a meme in which it was written that what happened with education was we switched from using a thumb as a signature to doing a signature with a pen. But after after Aadhaar and digitization, now we're back to our thumbs and
Yeah,
scanning our
like
thumbs.
our biometrics, our retina, and all of that. It's like a biological. We're back to getting our biological markers. Signing everything with our biological markers instead of signing documents with the pen. I mean, if you go to make a, for example, if you make a lease agreement or even a if you make an agreement of with an owner of a plot of land or anything, you have to register it with the government, right? But
Yeah,
that is all done through the Aadhaar, like anything else. So all of your I mean, they don't even ask for your signature,
yeah.
because what's the need for your signature when they have your the size of your eyes, fingerprints, everything, all 10 hands, not just one, all
Yeah,
10 fingers,
that
sorry,
all
all
10
10.
fingers.
Yeah, so I went a little bit like AI, artificial intelligence over there, like 10 hands.
And
So
it's so true. Pen is an archaic instrument. I remember a time someone used to ask for a pen. There were at least two or three lying around in the house, and you could easily reach it. Now you're not used to using pens and writings. Even the spellings have, even people have become very bad when it comes to spellings. They're so used to typing and auto text and auto correction.
Well, I
That's
just
one
want
thing.
to mention before we move on to the other concepts, like want to just bring a little spiritual angle into these the things that we've discussed so far. So the Big Brother surveillance system, that's kind of like almost mocking of God's omnipresence in a certain way, because of course, in one of the basic dogmas, if you are a Christian or if you are even a person of any other faith, is that God is omnipresent, right? And this surveillance system, it mocks God's omnipresence in a certain way, but not as if to benefit us. It's like it imitates God in a certain way, so that it's like it's always looking at you, like an accusing way. This completely contradicting to the omnipresence of God, and even mocking that aspect in a certain way. And also, we talked about newspeak, and you were absolutely correct. Like this is done, these changing of the dictionary, the newspeak dictionary, it's ever changing, and it's not something that is totally alien to us, right? I mean, the definition of the word for stabbies, that's been changed recently as well. So this is like, we can see our current political elites are taking a lot of lessons from this book. So this is like, as you mentioned, it's like, it's changing the definition, changing the way, because when people when people change the definition of words, we start thinking about them differently, right? It's our mind is connected to uh, the language. And also, the language of, we have this thing in the Bible called the word of God. So that's like, that's like a connection between the spoken word, and the divine. So not only is our memories controlled, but even our worldview, religious worldview is controlled in a way, because our ability, and this is very telling in this novel, there is no mention of any religious institutions in existence. And the reason is very simple. It's like, uh, all of these words, when you change the language, you ultimately stop conceiving God in your mind. So yeah, I just wanted to make a note of that. It's very telling. And another thing, you wanted to get onto a concept that you've selected, or should I select the next concept here?
When it comes to uh, the spiritual aspect, like you mentioned,
Mhm. Mhm.
so there are three things that can be highlighted in this book. That's what I could highlight is. So one is the topic of uh, fornication or sex. If you see, whenever any religious view has to be mocked, or any traditional concept of society or family has to be changed, the one thing that is done is, uh, you know, the focus is always on the act of sex or fornication. And even in this book, if you see, Winston specifically mentions that the way he could defy the government was by having sex, and it was a political act. So that is one thing, because if in a traditional worldview,
Well, another thing I want to interject there is that there's this small movement within the party called the Anti-Sex League,
yeah,
which is so Winston falls in love with a girl from that movement, a girl named Julia. So
yeah,
initially, Winston hates that girl because he's a part of that, and she appears to be very zealous. So that's a very interesting thing that I noted, and I want to just juxtapose it with what you said. Is this party is very rigid with its doctrines on sex and particularly procreation.
Mm,
So, what is your opinion on that? Because, of course, Winston is trying to rebel through the act of fornication and all of that.
mm,
He's sleeping with prostitutes, and he's going into the gutter to mix with proles
mm,
and. And on the other hand, which is the very extreme opposite end of the party doctrine, which is like they're trying to stop the act of intimacy altogether. So what do you think about that?
Okay, so like I mentioned, when it comes to Winston, uh, this is, I think, in the second chapter in which Winston and Julia are acquainted and they start meeting in secret. And this is the part where they have something parallel to religious institutions when she mentioned that the party doesn't want the party he doesn't want its citizens to waste time on sexes because it then drains your energy and you don't want to do anything else or get involved in other activities like their community hikes and all 2 minute hate speech and everything. And I think so, somewhere where this is where also the religious orders they work on it. I mean, celibacy is something that is encouraged so that you are not distracted by all the worldly things and you can concentrate uh, better on your religious life. This is usually the calling for monks and clerics. So that is one parallel. I don't know the intention behind it, why it was set like this, but I see a parallel over there. Secondly, is something which is common among all progressive. Making something that is sacred and valuable. You take that thing and make it mundane, and you what you can say desecrate it, like sex, for example. Now, in a family, in a traditional family, a religious family, the relation between a man and a woman as sacred, uh, and it is a part of your a righteous man and a righteous woman. They are supposed to behave and procreate in a certain way, uh, but you throw away that and you just make it as something as mundane. Okay, it's just for making kids, or either is just for having fun. And there's one more thing that I noticed. It was it when what was that guy's name? Winston. So it's the time when Winston was about to attend the 2 minute of hate speech uh, event, and that's the first time he had seen Julia. So that's what was written. He disliked nearly all women, and especially the young and pretty ones. It was always the women, and above all, the young ones, who were the most bigoted adherents of the party, the swallower of slogans, amateur spies, and oozers out of unorthodoxy. So this is also, you can see it in current world. If you see major propaganda is usually directed to women, and the young women are the one who swallow it really quick. Like if you remember Edward Bernays and that advertisement for Marlboro that he had planned, it was with
Yeah,
first time having.
he's known as the father of propaganda.
Yeah. Yes, and then the every moment is about go girl, be strong woman, do this, do that, uh, and this has you know resulted in the dynamic between a husband and wife to be completely different today as compared to what it was 2 3 decades ago. It's also resulted in something called. I mean, this was like reading out something from a Victor poster. They hate all women, especially the young and pretty ones. That is something similar that I found comes to spiritual thing, and even when it comes to marriage, I mean, marriage was something that was approved by the state only for the sake of procreation. And second thing, I don't know where it was. Let me see. Yeah. So even in that time, we had written in 1948. At that time, the use of word Mrs. wasn't really appreciated, and it was like, you know, when it comes to the party people, the differences, uh, there should be no differences when it comes to clothing, or when it comes to the activities involved. The only difference that was there was procreation. That's it. And that too, I think if I would have written something like that at this point of time, I wouldn't even consider that, because I don't think in 1948 something has birth control, right?
It's very one thing is very important is that this is not just very random restrictions. This is particularly aimed at reducing intimacy between between individuals within this organization, party, or super state, whatever you'd like to term it as. And the reason they want to do that, the reason they want to reduce intimacy to its very bare minimum level of, like you said, procreation, is because they want that intimacy to be directed to the party. So if you have something like a family, if you have a wife, a loving, caring wife, or you have children, or you have parents, or whatever, chances are you're not going to give your full attention to the party. You're going to think that this is you're going to think that this, okay, I am going to give loyalty to my party, but it's going to be to a certain extent. It's not going to invade into my own personal sphere, and
Mm,
that sphere is reserved for my family. So yeah, this is why this goes along perfectly with what you mentioned about women being the target of propaganda or indoctrination. Is that women are much more susceptible to intimacy in this regards. Women are inclined to that. So if you cut that aspect off from women, of course their intimacy is not going to go away. They're simply going to redirect it towards the political life. And that is why when Winston, he was seeing Julia for the first time, he wasn't seeing her as he was seeing all of her zealotry,
mm.
all the, like during this that it mentions during the 2 minute what's it called, 2 minute hate, 2 minutes
2 minutes
hate.
hit.
Yeah. So that's another thing I'd like to discuss. This 2 minute hate. It's a very curious thing, and I think it's such a brilliant concept, because it's kind of like, uh, uh, okay, I want to explain how this is depicted in this book. So this is like everybody has to partake in this, right? This is like a ritual, or it
Yes.
lasts for 2 minutes, like hence the name 2 minute hate. And but it's directed at this one particular person who's in the book known as Emmanuel Goldstein. So very peculiar choice for a name, Emmanuel Goldstein. But the first name Emmanuel is very striking to me,
Uh,
because in the Old Testament, it's one of the prophesied name of
mm.
Jesus Christ. So
Yes,
I don't know
Emmanuel.
if that was the author's intention, or author just chose a random name. Could very well be the latter. But Emmanuel Goldstein, this person is the scapegoat of this the entire superstate, right? And it's not very hard to figure out, right? Every nation has to have some kind of a scapegoat. US has the scapegoat of Russia, and China has the scapegoat of US, or or North Korea has the scapegoat of the entire West. And it's not very hard to figure out who India's scapegoat is. We all know that it's the country starts with a P and ends
And I
with an
see
N.
there's
uh,
one starting with C as well.
yeah, that's the newer iteration one, but the traditional one, if you go to our granddaddies, they won't say that name, they'll say the name with P. So okay, so I it's very common. So that's a very interesting thing, and that's it seems to not be just a feature of just a totalitarian system, but here it's magnified, it's like it's highlighted, it's to the nth degree. So just to hammer the point home, like this is like something that is unifying every person. And of course they're obligated to do that. If it's not a choice, right? You have to participate in screaming at this person called Emmanuel Goldstein, and you have to do it whether you like it or not, and even you have to like it even. So this is like George Orwell. He's drawing this from, I think, the Stalin uh, uh, episodes. During this time, it was said that when you applauded to Stalin during that time, but applauded after his speeches, you should not be the first the person who stops, the first one person who stops clapping, that person is off to the gulags. So this is like I think borrowed from that historical incident. What do you think? What is your opinion on this?
The best part about Emmanuel Goldstein was he doesn't exist. He's
Exactly. Yeah. So it's nowhere known in the movie, but somehow it's rumored to be this mysterious, enigmatic figure, with a mystique, and he's written this book. What's the name of the book? Uh,
some
I can't remember.
revolutions,
Something.
some manifesto.
Some manifesto.
Yeah,
It's not important what the name is, but yeah, he's rumored to be the writer of this work. And this is
and
like circulated secretly, and
there's a group called
among some.
Brotherhood which he leads.
Right, right. And Winston eventually gets a hold of this book, if I remember, and he uh, gets a hold of this book through one of the very important members of the party. And
I
it's
think the two
Mhm.
minute hate. I think that is where the journey starts. At one point, you have
Right.
Julia sitting, and another is O'Brien. So while this 2 minute hate was going on, I think there are some members of the party who have a look like who is genuinely buying the propaganda and who is not. And that person is O'Brien, and O'Brien looks at Winston, or Winston looks at him, and then he gives a look that O'Brien recognizes, okay, this is the guy who's not really buying this crap. And that is when they meet, and he speaks about brotherhood and how things work. And he's given that book which he reads. A 2 minute hate, speaking of 2 minute hate, and Goldstein. So, I think Orwell has some kind of fascination for Trotsky
Oh
because
yes. Yeah. Hmm.
so I think I have it here.
So that
Uh,
that
it was a
that
lean Jewish face with great fuzzy oral of white hair and small goatee beard, a clever face and yet somehow inherently despicable, with a kind of senile silliness in long thin nose. I don't know. I mean, here also the description of Goldstein is similar to Trotsky, and even in his
right.
second book, not second, but the other book, Animal Farm, there is a pig who's like a Trotsky. So after the first pig who starts the revolution, Lenin supposedly passes away. So there is another pig who's trying to lead the animal farm, but another evil pig who's depicted as Stalin he shoos him away. So yeah, Trotsky over there. And something similar to 2 minutes yet you can see right now if you see in North Korea. So Korean citizens in Pyongyang are supposed to gather in front of the statues of the previous two leaders on their anniversaries when they die, and they are supposed to cry.
Yeah,
And
it's
their
a
party
very
members,
the Hollywood, Bollywood actors should take a cue from them because these people they cry on cue. They just instinctively they will start to shed tears. Uh, so it's a very it's an astonishing phenomenon. It's like it's not there's nothing like it in other countries or even our own countries, but the hysteria is there. I mean, if you look at our own country, and if you don't want to get controversial, you look at any other country, and you will always see hysteria during the time of elections, right? You will see
yeah, and even
emotional
this,
charged. Yeah.
even in the start of the decade, there was fear, fear, fear. The thing is constant repetition every day. That is where they have the first slogan, "War is peace." So they are in a state of a perpetual war. And in that book, it was mentioned that because of war, you can have control over capital and the resources. And if there's perpetual war, you can always get along with less resources, and people won't usually revolt. That is why it's called, war is peace.
Yes, and speaking of that, it's a nice segue to a very a much more subtle unification factor, a much more another kind of scapegoat, but it's much more subtle. It's not very overt like the 2 minute set, and that is the concept of perpetual war, as you have mentioned. Every time Winston looks at the news, every time he hears the news and looks at the announcements, it's always Oceania has defeated Eurasia, and it's like always Oceania is making progress, making progress on the battlefield, and it's like this is continuously going on. But he is one of the first, or maybe one of the few to notice that yesterday he heard, if he was listening to the news yesterday, he heard that they were fighting Eurasia, but then all of a sudden it changes to East Asia. So it's like subtle changes, happening
Double
during the
think kind of.
announcements, and it's just the intention is quite clear by the end. When Winston is interrogated by the party, it's something that Julian Assange also recently said about the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war, is that the war is not meant to end. The war is meant to be continued endlessly. So that's a very interesting thing. The war is meant to be continued, and that is the reason why the reason given in the book is a sort of this endless emergency kind of situation that war creates. So when you're in war, if people don't ask, no, my rights, my liberties are going to stand regardless of emergencies. Like a good example is the last 3 years that we just witnessed. All of our personal liberties, our medical freedoms, they all went away. They vanished like magic. Because it's quote unquote emergency. And war is another thing that's like that. If it's endless, it's a continuous emergency. It's a never ending emergency, and when you're in that state of emergency, the power of the state, it increases exponentially. Increases a lot. So that's a good observation by Orwell in this novel, and a very important one, in my opinion at least.
One more thing when it comes to the same, something similar is that you can relate to current world is the GDP figures and the economy is always doing good. There's one more
Right.
thing, if you remember, the
Our team
instance
is not losing.
remembers.
Our team is not losing. The other team is winning, or something to that extent. Yeah.
No, like in that particular case in the book, It was one day the chocolate ration was supposed to be decreased, but then the very next day it's like, we are doing good, our production has increased and we are surplus in anything. And I think every state does this to some extent, that is mess with the statistics. And GDP is always known to be a not such a reliable figure. I like, uh, if you are in India, you know what the general state of the country is. But then now we have fourth largest economy. We have surpassed UK or something like that. So that
Yeah.
is an uh, double thing. Okay, one more thing I'd like to ask you is, uh, what are your thoughts about the the strata of the society that has been mentioned in the book, like the inner party, the outer party, and the proletariat, and the
Well,
descriptions of the
mhm.
characteristics of that group?
You're talking about the characteristics of the party in SOC and the inner circle and outer circle of that party, or like the
Yes.
social dynamics at play.
So they have prescribed certain parameters or characteristics for each type of group. So
Right.
basically, there are three groups. One is the inner circle, inner party, the outer party, and the proletariat. Uh,
Yeah, so it's like very it's very similar to the society that we live in, right? The It's like uniformal society all over the world. Wherever you go, there is a kind of this middle class who are politically invested, right? And but they don't know everything. They like the normies, these middle class, right? They like they live in cities. They watch the mainstream news cycle 24/7, and they swallow the propaganda whole. They're very little, introspection in them. The very little critical thinking in them. So very little skepticism. And the outer circle is a proletariat. That's like the worst of the worst. The TikTokers basically. So yeah, I
I
mean
mean,
that's
there is some what do you say, some lapse between the middle class
yeah,
and TikTokers.
overlapping. Yeah, there's some overlapping there, and it's like that's the worst of the worst. The TikTokers, the people who just they get intoxicated 24/7, drug addicts and whatnot. The party doesn't even bother with them, because they're basically like gone cases. They're hopeless. And they're just apolitical. They won't resist or anything. They're just, happy to survive and just do the YOLO, you only live once kind of philosophy. That's why hence there's sexual restrictions are non-existent. I'm talking about the proletariats, and of course the
The
TikTokers as well.
proletariats and the animals are free. That's what
Yeah.
they say.
So yeah, it's like there's no point in controlling them. It just have to make sure that they don't get out of their habitat. They don't get out of their cages. So and of course the inner circle are the elites. Of course, every I mean the existence of elites are inevitable. And of course the elites know the truth. They're not susceptible to propaganda. They don't believe their own propaganda. Some of them may, but most of them are like quite aware to what the actual mechanics are, and they're eager to use the mechanics for power and control. But if you notice, there's one very distinct class that is barely existing in the novel, and that's the critical thinking class. So that's like almost that is actively persecuted. If you're if you're belonging to that class, you're marked for persecution, you're marked for re-education, and even you're going to die if
It's
you
the extreme hive mind or that is
right,
favored and not the individual.
right.
What I would like to add this is, it's quite similar to the society that has been depicted in Plato's Republic. So Plato's Republic has three classes. So the lowest one are like proletariats. They don't have any kind of intellect. Their main aim is to listen to their bodily and animalistic instinct. And democracy is the best government system for them, because all they want to do is they are hedonistic people. So yes, what the government has to offer, will offer you free this, free that, free that. A democracy is great for them. The middle class and the second class in Plato slightly differs. The second class in Plato is uh, what is called the guardians. They take care of the security of the society, the warrior class. But the warrior class, there is no concept of marriage. The lowest class, anything goes, no problem with that. There is no concept of marriage, and so it's just like for the sake of procreation, you know, multiple people can meet here and there. That's all right. And the top one is the philosopher king, in which celibacy is ideal, and they are the one that thinks over here. And it was similar over here to some extent, that the inner party, the higher the people, the elite are the ones who does the thinking part. Yes, it is a high kind of mentality, but they are the one who thinks. And the best part was they mentioned some social mobility. So there's something that I would read. The aims of these three groups are entirely irreconcilable. I don't know. Uh, Too much syllables. The aim of the high is to remain where they are. The aim of the middle is to change place with the high. The aim of the low, when they have when they have an aim, or it is an abiding characteristics of the low, that they are too much crushed by drudgery to be more than intermittently conscious of anything outside their daily lives, is to abolish all distinctions and create a society in which all men shall be equal. So it says that equality is something that is desired by the lowest class. So the the elites just want to stay there. The middle ones wants to go up, and the lowest, they don't aim really to go up. They just want everyone to come down to their level.
Yeah,
And
and now people not only want equality, but they want equity, right? That's equality of outcome. So that's both of them are basically impossible if you're going to run a very efficient society.
yeah, and there's something more I had. This is about the record department. And the record department, after all, was itself only a single branch of the Ministry of Truth, whose primary job was to reconstruct the past, but to supply the citizens of Oceania with newspapers, films, textbook, telescreen program, plays, and novels. And
So this
when
is
it,
the censorship job.
Yep, that was Ministry of Truth. That what Winston used to do. This is
Yeah.
supplying the media. Oh, bloody hell.
Okay.
I lost it.
So
So there is a separate what is it? Separate group of people who specifically cater to this media for the lowest strata, and their job is I lost it. Yeah, but their job is to create materials like cheap novels and pornographic materials, and that's for the lowest strata.
right. So Winston is part of he's shown as someone, a staff working at the Ministry of Truth. And is he shown to be working in the Hall of Records, that particular department, or is he working in the Ministry of Truth?
This
Well,
is the Ministry of Truth.
yeah. So he's basically one of the many people who are tasked with changing the records of the past. So this is another concept that Orwell picked up from the Stalinist government. Of course, like you mentioned, the Trotsky aspect, and the the 2 minutes hate and all of that. And of course, this is another aspect. One of the well-known things about Stalin's government was he could make people disappear.
from
If
photographs.
from photographs and from I don't know if he did it from written records, but that's a very well-known aspect of his government is the extreme censorship. And of course, what's the one thing that we have seen increase in our current culture and in our society is that uh, mass censorship, online censorship or physical censorship. There's people, a lot of our interactions these days are online, and the internet is one big monopoly, that's under big tech corporations, and they're in complete cahoots with the government, and they have a very open approach to let you know that there are certain things that you can't even approach or can't even consider, let alone talking about. So if you if you say those things, you will get, not only will you get banned, not only will you get your YouTube channel banned or some things like that, but you're going or your payment systems are going to be affected. So this has happened with a certain person who hosts who hosts 4 hours or something daily. That's Mr. Jones, and
Lord
he's
Voldemort.
yeah, Lord Voldemort, and his name. I mean, he got cancelled. His Uber facility got cancelled. That's what he said on air. And of course, it happened to other people too. Certain members of the America First movement, like, it said that they cannot take the flight. Domestic flight access have been banned from them, and so it goes on and on. And recently it happened to an entire country, basically, into 2020, when Russia attacked Ukraine. That entire country was taken off the Swift payment system. So it not only happens to dissidents, but it happens to entire countries if you go off script and do something that the political elites do not want you to do. So yeah, so banning from payment systems, and of
That
course,
happened in
like,
Kerala few days. I think it was
really.
last month. Yeah, the UPI facility was frozen for someone, even
Oh
though there was
yeah.
no
Mhm.
previous
and
record of it.
and of course, the you being taken off of platforms, that's a kind of unpersoning, yeah, as it's called in newspeak. So that's a kind of censoring. And of course, we have not quite reached that level of censorship as shown in 1984. So what do you think about that? What's your opinion about censorship? Do you think it's uncannily similar to what's depicted by Orwell?
Um, what's depicted by Orwell is certainly I don't see that thing happening. It's too much. I don't think a good number of population would just submit themselves to that kind of torture. Yes, little, but the thing when it comes to India is compared to West is you won't find any level of skepticism when it comes to government as compared to West. ठीक है आधार कार्ड बनाने लग जाओ लाइन पे जिंगा लाला लेना है लग जाओ लाइन पे
Yeah,
टेस्टिंग
line
करना
pe
है
lag
लग जाओ लाइन पे
right.
it's like everything that comes from the government is considered to be something that needs to be done and not much thought is given. So I don't think the Indian government has to resort to that kind of situation. I think even in the
Well, I
West,
mean,
yeah,
in our education system, revisions are always happening in the syllabus, right? Particularly in
yeah,
history and the humanities.
yeah.
And certain things like the current government has said. So I'm not going to say what it is, but it's very obvious. And this is not only started with the current government. Of course, the previous government has set a precedent for this. So This kind of thing is very common to see because a lot of like you said, a lot of Indians, they take their material straight from the school books, and
Yep.
it's independent research is barely pursued. So yeah, like you said, yeah, that's very true.
It's like mentioned in the book, those who control the past control the future or present. So yes, central governments, irrespective to which uh, party, irrespective to the party, they've tried to change what history book is. The only difference is between the current government and the previous ruling party was the previous ruling party comes from more of a Fabian socialist background, and things are slow. I mean, things will creep in, but it won't pinch you all of a sudden. And I think our current prime minister is more of a revolutionary than any leftist in India. He,
Right, it's particularly big government, big, a merging of the banks, centralization of everything, of the economy, introduction of digital currency, so that, yeah, and the surveillance system that we have mentioned through the Aadhaar and everything. It's just one big. It's just a creation of one big brother who is going to see where you're going to go or where you're not. You know. Yeah.
yes, and vehicles soon will be replaced by number plates with which is GPS enabled. So wherever you will go, you know the location of that. But the main problem when it comes specifically to India is Indians do not realize, not at all to any extent realize the false dialectic between left and right. They think that something that is centralized and something which is more government controlled is communist or socialist, Vampanthy type, and something which is more owned by capitalist is right wing, but that's not the case. See, revolutionary mindset has nothing to do with left or right leaning at this point of time. It is more about how the capital is moved and how the capital is concentrated. If it's concentrated in the state, it's nothing different. I mean, the state will abuse it definitely. And if it's concentrated, given by the state to the capitalist and more or less monopolist capitalist, then it will be abused by the capitalist. The outcome won't be drastically different. Now, if you talk about the globalist to right wing people, they say, ki, Are you remember George Soros? That fellow had said negative about Modi, but the India government doesn't listen to Soros and all that things. But fine,
Well, there are
okay.
friends of Soros who has
They're,
praised
they're,
Modi.
I mean,
Yeah.
we are working towards the development goals of Davos.
Like Modi is one of chosen leader of the who is in good standing in
Yeah,
the World Economic Forum, right?
yeah, Bill Gates is welcomed with open arms in
Yeah.
India.
He
And
he's
he,
like he's like this this colonial master who is inspecting, अरे क्या इधर क्या चल रहा है, इधर सही चल रहा है ना, सब ठीक ठाक है ना, कुछ फंडिंग चाहिए रहेगा तो बोलना. That kind of, and he's doing it in all departments, department of agriculture, and that's like that doesn't look right wing to me.
and the best part is he tweeted out to congratulating Narendra Modi for his 100th Man Ki Baat speech, when which he highlighted all the development goals. I mean, तभी किधर गया है? सोरोस के अब
Uh,
आवाज चढ़ जाता है. बिल
yeah,
गेट्स आए तो एक शब्द नहीं निकलता.
Bill Gates is a philanthropist. He's not like Soros. He's a good philanthropist.
But yeah, similar to like in the book, when it comes to Bill Gates, uh, purity is made mundane, it's made profane. Let that be, as mentioned in the book, let it be sex. Or when it comes to Bill Gates, let it be DNA or agriculture. He doesn't he doesn't like purity. It's for him, like Winston, he likes profane.
Right. So yeah, it's a very There's like so much to pick up from this book, and of course, ultimately, I want to just move on to this thing called well, basically, it's an interaction. So this is when I try to wrap it up. So this is an interaction between as I mentioned, as talked about at the start of this discussion, is that Orwell was friends to, and or I don't know if they were friends, but if they were acquainted to Huxley, Aldous Huxley, the writer of Brave New World, and George Orwell. They were acquainted to some degree, and it's somewhere it said that Orwell had sent a copy of his book to Aldous Huxley to review. So Huxley reviewed. So he sent a private uh, correspondence to uh, George Orwell, and he says that this one criticism that is there is that it's like it's mentioned in at the very end of the interrogation, Winston's interrogation. It says that his interrogator, who is I think his name is Brian something.
O'Brien.
So O'Brien, yeah. So O'Brien is saying that the very end of humanity is like picture the very end of humanity is a boot on the face of man forever. So that's like showing brute force aggression, brute coercion. That's one criticism that Huxley pointed towards is like we are past that stage where
Yeah,
you
that's
have to brutally coerce someone if you want them to follow you. You don't need to do that, and that's what's written in Brave New World. So that's like, in my opinion, both are very complementary. Brave New World as well as 1984. You need to read both books, of course. And Brave New World makes this argument that people won't need
yeah.
coercion to control them. They'll do it willingly, voluntarily. They'll they're going to
Take the happy
be.
pill.
Yeah, and it's like Brave New World is, of course, if you look at the past 2 3 years, Brave New World was very uh, precise in that area, because of course they talked about mandating drugs in Brave New
Yeah.
World. And of course it's not about mandating even. It's like this is the latest thing that you
Mm.
need to take. Oh, it's for your own good or
It's like you
whatever.
need water to survive. You need that
Yeah,
drug.
it's like we've made this pharmaceutical this entire system, we've made this a necessity, as almost as necessary as education, or even more necessary than entertainment. We have to have our pills if we're going to even think straight. So imagine like the psyche of a drug addict. Imagine that spread to to the masses. Everybody is thinking like a drug addict. Everybody is thinking like, you have to take this pill, you have to take this thing, you have to watch this, otherwise it's you're going
I mean,
to.
don't do drug addicts walk like zombies like how Epsilons do in Brave New?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, this it's that's the thing, and you don't need to coerce them. They're basically like zombies, getting in line, like you mentioned, getting in line for a certain thing. The आधार बनाना है तो line लगा दिया इतना लंबा लंबा. You have to stand 3 hours, 4 hours in that line. Basically half of your day.
Ah,
So that's like a zombie mentality, like a lack of critical thinking, skepticism, lack of questioning the authorities, even like no sign of questioning the authorities at all. That's a zombie like mentality. So yeah, uh, that's a very good observation that Aldous Huxley made in his criticism of this novel. And
yeah,
of course,
but
like
I
yeah.
think both are similar when it comes to destruction of the past.
Right,
I
right.
mean,
They
this,
ultimately the theme and topic, they are similar, but that's the one major difference that they have. And it's not necessary that, of course, brute force is still in existence, for example, if a person in African continent says, I'm going to get away from this economic system and I'm going to create my own currency so that I'm not dependent on that, on a foreign reserve currency, then he gets his
mm,
entire country bombed to
mm.
pieces. So that kind of brute force is still there, especially when dealing with external factors.
I think
So
it's whatever suits at a particular point of time and point of population. Where
so
military action is required, it is. Like for example, since the dawn of the decade, some people resisted, especially in Australia, and there was police action, right?
right, right, yeah.
And the one who
So
listened were stood in the lines. So depends, whichever works.
yeah, and it's not the just it's a different kind of coercion as well, because it's not necessary that you have to have a zombie like mentality, just as just that kind of person to stand in a line. Some people are just out there like the proletariats, just want to survive, just want to stay, just want to be able to breathe oxygen,
Keep
and
their jobs.
yeah, you have to take it because of your job. You have to take this drug because of your social fear of social ostracization or whatever. So that's also there. That's also a very subtle form of coercion. That's why people can say, oh no, it's not mandatory. Yeah, well, it is in a lot of ways, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
it is. So
yeah.
we'll wrap it here. Uh,
Yeah, just
but
want to make one final point. Yeah, I think this is the cherry on the top when it comes to everything. And I'm a big fan of this dissident Alexander Solzhenitsyn,
mm,
who was a dissident from the Soviet Union, who recorded all the activities of the gulags and everything, and he was exiled. So he made this very acute observation, I think. When people asked him, why did Russia fall into communistic chaos, why was Russia so why did this happen, like how did such a tyrannical force came into being? And he concluded in the speech at Templeton, or was it Harvard, he concluded that this has happened because men have forgotten God. And I think this is the most important thing of all, is that when you lose the conception of God, when you lose the thinking, when you put God out of all public spaces, go for aggressive secularism, atheism, or whatever, you are not going to have such a high opinion of the human person, of the human being, because this inherent value that we have as individuals or even as a collective, it comes from this concept in the first book of the Bible, which is that God has made human beings in his image. And because we are made in his image, that's the reason we enjoy so many rights, so, quote unquote rights or whatever. It's because God values human beings above the rest of creation. And when we share that same sentiment, when we share that same worldview, we want uh, you know b- unfairly treat our neighbors, or we even when we are in a position of power, we will seek to give everyone a fairness, certain amount of fairness at least. We won't seek to take away their rights, take away their god given value, and just treat them like cattle. So that is going to be very difficult to do if you are a Christian, or if you even have some semblance, or if you have some concept of the divine. Uh, if you are going to treat a person better, you need a justification for doing that, and that justification comes from a transcendental person. So that is a very important thing that we should take note of. And of course, the best example of our interacting with another with another person. It's exemplified, of course, in the life of Jesus Christ. So in Jesus Christ's life, we don't see any kind of this coercion, brutal hands-on approach, and that's very revealing of how God's attitude is towards human beings, generally speaking. So yeah, I think that's a very important thing to note. What do you want to? What are your final thoughts, Maximus, on this?
Regarding what you have said right now, uh, like in a Christian thought, like when we speak of evil, we don't uh, give it any ontological weight.
Right.
Evil, evil
Mm.
is evil does not exist as a being. It is it is due to lack of goodness of God, and evil is something that comes out of your free will when you reject God. God has given us the free will, and if we follow God, then there is no room for evil. But evil will manifest if you use that free will and go against God. And when in a world where there is no God, you don't have any guidance of the church or the anchor in which you are persuaded to behave in a certain way.
Yeah, ultimately we need a model, right?
Yeah,
We need a model.
and
Yeah.
without the concept of divine, there is more reliance on a super state. uh, you give government more powers to take care of things. That protective net that religion and the organized church provides, when it's taken away from you, the state comes in picture, and we are as men we are fallen. And when and when you give power to fallen men, it can go in any direction. Good may happen,
Exactly.
but
Mhm.
rarely that's the case.
Yes,
So
that's so true. And so, like you mentioned, we have to have an anchor like the church or in a religious institutions. So, what do these institutions do? They help us emulate a model such as Jesus Christ, right? And another thing that's very important that I'd like to note here is that yeah, just that emulation of that model is very important because ultimately we do emulate things, whether we like it or not, whether we are conscious of it or not. If we have a tyrannical system of government like Oceania in 1984, we will emulate that worldview the government sets for us, and we will just as the government treats us like cattle, or it treats us like work units, so that they can take out or take in whatever. We will do that same thing to with our personal interactions. And that's why with the lack of intimacy and everything, we will snitch on our own spouses, as it's also mentioned in 1984, the children's spying on their parents.
yeah,
That's one thing that happens. And we also see this in the last 2 to 3 years, people snitching on each other, whether this person has taken this particular pill or drug or whatever or not, and neighbors calling on their other
mm,
neighbors. So we don't want to do that, right? We don't want to be snitching on each other. We want to be helping each other, like Jesus said, love one another as sorry Jesus said, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor. That's the second greatest commandment. So that's the most one of the most important thing. It's very well exemplified in the crucifixion and the resurrection, because with the crucifixion we see the self-sacrifice, the sacrificing nature that's not evident in totalitarian systems. Of course, totalitarian systems depend on you not to be able to self-sacrifice. It doesn't want you doing that. And of course, the resurrection shows that the
they don't want
self-sacrifice,
martyrs. It's
yeah,
like,
just want martyrs for the government, and the
no, no, no. I
resurrection,
was not saying that. If you
yeah,
remember, He gave an example of Spanish inquisitors. So during
Right,
the
right.
Inquisition, they used to burn the heretics and they used to give them
Mhm.
martyrdom. He's like, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, that's
We'll do it
because
in a way.
yeah, we'll do it in secret.
Yeah.
That yeah. So he was also talking about this is why the past regimes fell, is because they did everything. They did the persecution, everything so publicly, and like you said, it unconsciously creates martyrs for the cause. So this is the one thing, and like I mentioned, it's so beautifully laid out in the gospel, in the crucifixion story, in the ministry, like Jesus caring for the sick and everything, and giving sight to the blind, and then ultimately his resurrection, which proves that he has defeated death through just care for love for his creation. So yeah, I want to cap it off with that.
Just one
And
last thing that I would
mhm,
like to mention, since
yeah,
this
sure.
topic, you have mentioned this topic, uh, the importance of the existence of God and
Mhm,
and why it is so important for transcendental things.
mhm,
If you recall, I'll read out one line. O'Brien
mhm.
smiled faintly. You're no metaphysician, Winston, he said. Until this moment, you had never considered what it is meant by existence. I will put it more precisely. Does the past exist concretely in space? Is there somewhere or other a place, a world of solid objects where the past is still happening? Now,
Yeah.
something like time, identity over time and self. This is
Mhm,
like the perfect imperialistic and how the system is. It shows how the system is flawed.
mhm.
From an atheistic or an imperialistic worldview, you can't have something like identity over time. And he mentioned like uh, it's not solipsism; it's collective solipsism. So there is no room for self. There is no room for past. There is
Right.
specifically uh, there is there is no room for identity as a human and what humanness is personhood, like we say.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's it. I think we should wrap it up.
All
We
right.
can go on
So
and on.
yeah, that's so many things, but we want to present some brief encapsulation. I think I've really enjoyed your insights, Maximus. There's a lot of things to take note of, and your ability to uh, parallel these things in the book with current events is very timely, is much needed. So let's wrap it up, and thank you for this brilliant
Yep, I would
conversation, Maximus.
recommend. It's a good read. It's not extensive, 170 or 180 pages on the Kindle version. I don't know the hard copy.
It's
So
like 200 or something
yeah,
pages on the hard copy.
yeah, it's a good read. I think people
Mhm.
should give it a try. Those who are not into reading can definitely watch a movie. There is a new movie coming
Oh
this
no,
year,
I've heard about that. I've heard
and
about
it's going
that.
to be in Russian language.
Oh yeah, yeah, and well, I didn't know about that. This could be a new development, but I did know something that they're going to revise certain things so that it's more adjusted to the current generation, so to
That
speak.
would be nice because uh, if you take
Um,
the book in its entirety, it's too extreme, and that is something not plausible.
Well, not in a good way. I have to add, because when it's adjusted for current generations, it's code word for being wokified. So
And
yeah,
uh,
but hopefully it gets the
I mean, it's
attention.
better than watching TikTok. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, it's
it's still a
certainly better. Yeah. So yeah, hope you have a good week ahead of you, Maximus, and God bless to everyone else. Take care.
yes. Same to you. God bless. We'll try to come up with a topic for next week.
God willing.
Let's see
God
how it.
willing.
Ciao.
All right.